This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and Upsnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Bennett, your spiritual counselor and psychic host for Metaphysically Speaking. We come to you every second Tuesday and every fourth Tuesday at 6 o'clock. I thought it was last week because it was the second week, but guess what? It wasn't the second Tuesday. So it's every second Tuesday, every fourth Tuesday. And this is where you can call in, and the telephone number to reach us here about the topic, or if you have a private question, you have to ask a question about the topic or general metaphysics. What's metaphysics? The entire universe. Space travel, meditation, astral travel, near-death experiences, what happens when you die. Do cats and dogs and elephants and seals have souls? Anything that is of interest to the rest of the universe. Then ask your personal question. And the number here is 844-390-8255. That's 844-390-8255. And if you'd like an appointment by phone or by Zoom, like we're doing now, that's 727-804-4536. That's 727-804-4536. Leave your name and your number. I will call you back and we'll set up an appointment. Okay, today the topic is to err is human. To forgive is divine. That's ERR. Those of you who are busy incorporating rap music into your lifestyle and into your dictionary, you don't usually hear the term err, and it's where error comes from, ERROR. And could we just lower that as? Well, that's because my hair is blowing in my eye, and we don't want me to be sit. Oh, yeah, thank you. And I love it. The colder it is, I'm happy because my paperwork goes away. So to err is human, to forgive is divine. And that simply means you can make a mistake. Any other people can make a mistake. And if you hang on to it, now you're creating a whole new separate life for yourself. But if you say, you know what, that was kind of mean, it was kind of stupid, I don't understand why you did that or why you said that, but I forgive you. And that's got to come from inside. And even if it doesn't yet, when you say it, it creates a positive energy vibration. It literally changes the energy around you. If I were dousing two people and one had harmed the other emotionally or physically or whatever, there would be one response. If the person who was harmed actually says, I forgive you. If you want to talk about it later, if you want to tell me what's behind what you're doing, that's great. The energy would change in a positive way. Your aura, your soul energy would be getting brighter and stronger. And the more you thought about it, say, you know what? I really don't know why he did that, why she said that. Maybe I'll never know, but I've had bad days, he's had bad days. I forgive the person. And your aura gets a little brighter. Your soul gets a little happier. And you change from within. You find that you're not hanging on to things that have been done to you. It's not that you're stupid. It's not that you are numb. It's that you actually understand that somebody else could be in a really bad place. Kids who were bullies, and I was bullied like many kids. I had red hair, had a a funny last name. When I was entering my teen years, my face broke out. I mean, I was in the smart kids class. I can't tell you the amount of obnoxious remarks those kids made, so many of them made towards those of us in the accelerated class. Just anything and everything. I was taller, and then I was average size. And then I got my menstruation early, and suddenly I had breasts. The only girl in the class. It was never ending. Never ending. And I was at the point where, why would they do that to me? I didn't do anything to them. I don't even know them. So I learned a long time ago that to hang on to every grudge, I'd have been dead a long time ago. I'd have been shriveled up and miserable and died by the time I was 20. If I had hung on to every insult, every mean thing that was said to me, every mean thing that was done to me, personally, at work, wherever. So you have to say to yourself, well, how do I feel? And what is it that I'm doing? Well, to carry that anger is to create a grudge. And that's not one of the 7 deadly sins. I think it should be. But the 7 deadly sins, we're dealing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 5 of the 7 deadly sins are related to anger, because anger is the number 1. The number 2 thing would be pride, in deciding, I'm not going to let him hurt my reputation. Who does he think he is? Gluttony. Gluttony isn't just about food, although I think that's one thing that heavy people don't understand. The psyche says, I'm 5'12". One of my cousins calls herself 5'12". She will not say that she is 6 feet tall. It's not that I need a little more food because I'm taller or athletic or whatever. It's people who are heavy are taking more than their fair share. And so if they were in an emergency situation, like a tornado, or where people had to be secluded, and there was X amount of food, they wouldn't be getting their X amount of food. And history is rife with situations just like this, where someone would be caught inside taking extra food, and they were killed because they were taking more than their fair share. They were being gluttonous. Gluttony can also be about money. You can want, it's about wanting more than your fair share and not contributing towards it. You can say, well, I brought more corn in, so therefore I get more. No, you brought corn in for the group that's secluded because of the tornado or because of the ravaging tribes outside, not just because you wanted more. You may think that's what you're doing, but the other 8, 10, 50 people in the room don't think so. They think everybody should be given their fair share. And to be angry at them is now going back to the first of the 7 deadly sins. And it's also responding to the gluttony, and it's responding to the pride that you think you're better than everybody else, whether it's money, whether it's food, whether it's some other resource. There's a big problem in the scientific and the medical community, anything that deals with inventions, because it's not just for the general public's benefit. I want prestige. I want purpose. I want to be known as a fabulous person who created this. That goes to pride. And then we have greed, because for many people, the more they get, the more they think they deserve. And the more they get after that, then they're positive that they deserve more. And lust. You think, how is lust dealing with erring and forgiving? Well, lust doesn't have to just mean about sex. It can mean you want what that one has. You want what this one has. And you feel that you're entitled. And you feel that you're just as, if not more important. And you're going to get it, no matter how. And if it is about wanting somebody else's girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, that's a no-no in the universe. If two people are together until they decide it's not working, keep your nose out of it. And one of the worst places is when people are under the control of others, whether that's a school, whether that's a church, whether that's a government, whether it's prison. I mean, look at that dumb girl that helped that criminal, that murderer get out a couple of months ago. They caught him, but she killed herself. She realized how stupid she was, her life was over, and he was probably going to kill her too. Lust is not a good thing. Lust for anything. All the decent religions around the world, whether they're Aborigines in Australia, Catholics, Jewish, Islam, which I do not agree with the Western religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Shinto, little religions that are regional that we haven't heard about unless you're an anthropologist, even Native American tribes. Understand that you can't walk around carrying a grudge. You become an entirely different person. You become someone who sees things through a black lens instead of a clear lens. And then you begin to build up this anger, and it becomes more and more so. And then you're gonna get that person. Look at these people doing the school shootings. Many times they're people who didn't do well in school, whether it was because of their lack of intellect, their lack of stimulation and caring by the parents. They never read a newspaper. They don't read good magazines like Time and Newsweek and look at the Wall Street Journal. And they're not well informed about things in life and other people's perspectives. They just see things through this very narrow little perspective. Look at what happened on January 6th. These people are angry at being fired, angry at COVID, angry at everything. And where do they go for their information? But to places that feed that, like Fox News, which I think should be removed from the air. There's nothing at all viable about that network. And during the first hearings, which I thought were brilliantly presented, and I saw them yesterday as well, brilliantly presented with facts. Donald Trump's words on tape being played for everyone to see. Can't argue with that because we all heard it, we all saw it. But these people are so angry. Their anger goes towards anyone who knows something that they don't, knows a broader perspective of life. And so therefore they look to get even. These 18-year-old kids, 20-year-old kids didn't do well in school. So what do? They go back and punish the school. They punish kids learning, trying to make a good life for themselves because they think they don't have a good life. And they probably don't because they're too busy hanging on to a grudge, hanging on and building and building and building and building and building. It's like garbage. It's like constantly dumping garbage inside your body and you explode. Whether you explode with a gun or screaming at people or inventing things that have no basis in reality, or by taking a teeny weeny little word that was maybe misspoken and creating an entire environment around it. And this could be starting from when you were a child. And then you build it up, and you build it up, and you don't say anything, and you build it up, and you never discuss it, you never bring it up, you never mention it. You never write a note to so-and-so and say, I'm really disturbed because I remember when we were 10 years old and you whacked me over the head with a shovel, or whatever it was. And I think we should talk about it. That would be great. There's a situation in my own family where one sister was a surprise and the other sisters were on their way and getting their way and having fabulous life, fabulous parents. And then this thing comes along and they were not kind to her. Well, one sister, give her credit, wrote a long letter and mentioned the things and talked about how unkind it was. And it meant so much to this sister that was harmed. And it meant so much to the kindness and the understanding that grew out of it. And a nice relationship, a happy relationship, a much better relationship. Just by admitting that person had erred, E-R-R-E-D, and asking for forgiveness. And credit to the sister who received the letter, she gave the forgiveness. Because you have to be willing to accept the forgiveness. Don't say, screw you, I don't want to be bothered, don't talk to me again. And how does that help you? You were hurt. The other person is now trying to say, I'm sorry, and you don't want to be bothered with it. So they're still carrying it, and you're carrying it even more. Anger is a cruel, hard, awful thing. And it distorts everything. And sometimes there's displaced anger. You can't be angry at the person who harmed you. Or if you are, you're still carrying it, but that's old. And so you look for somebody else. Somebody else with maybe a similar title or somebody else with a similar look. You know how sometimes people resemble each other? And so you start taking it out on that individual. And maybe they made a mistake and they think it's all about the one mistake that they've apologized for, and it turns out it's not. It turns out it's displaced anger. How do you get through the day? How do you get through the night? With all that anger and that grudge that's feeding it and feeding it and feeding it and feeding it. It's like chipmunks. I discovered that chipmunks maybe will nibble on the plant, but they go for the root. And I had a friend who said that one of her friends called her screaming because her tomato plants were just about ready to be picked. And she had noticed it. Am I crazy? I think that plants are getting shorter. Maybe it's the weight of the tomatoes. Yeah, that's got to be it. Well, she wakes up one morning and the tomato plant is gone. It wasn't like over here on the other side of the lawn. It wasn't around the corner. She looked and there was a hole. The chipmunks had eaten enough of the root that now they were at the stem and they just yanked the tomato plant down. And they were enjoying their tomatoes, having a festival with all their tomatoes. Now, I'm having a problem with the woodchuck. I've never had problems with woodchucks. I rescued a woodchuck from the road one day, brought him to the vet in my arms. Apparently, that's not a good idea. And they couldn't believe it when they saw me carrying him into the vet. The two technicians stood there like, I can't believe it. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. And they had a box ready because I didn't have a box at home. So I had brought the woodchuck in the house, put him on the counter while I'm looking up for the vet's number, called, brought him in. They couldn't believe it. And had the woodchuck right here. You support a cat or a dog right here. So it's right next to my chest. And I put him in the box and the woodchuck was jumping up and down. So they knew that the woodchuck had movement and the woodchuck could have bitten me. So I've always had good woodchuck karma. I don't know what I'm going to do with this woodchuck yet. We've had conversations. He's disregarded me. I think it's terribly rude. But nevertheless, when you're dealing with the animal community, you think, well, they're just dumb animals. They don't understand. They understand perfectly. These flowers weren't there, and suddenly they're there, and now you're eating them. What did you eat before? So you can forgive the woodchuck. You can forgive the chipmunk. I would like to have seen that woman's face when she looked down the hole for her tomato plant. I'm so sorry for her. And that's food. It's food for us. Chipmunks, for eons of time, has done very well without your tomato plant. So even creatures need to be forgiven. Don't go on the warpath. There are all kinds of funny articles that appear every year in some Life magazine about what they're battling this year and how they're going to get even. I can't remember what the article was about, but I remember the cartoon of the man who was writing the article. And he was coming like this with a shovel in one hand and the hose in the other. And I thought, gee, that's just like me at this moment. And I never had a problem in any house I've lived in any state I've lived in, except for now. So, but I've forgiven the woodchuck. And the chipmunks haven't eaten anything from the ground yet. So, they're good with me as far as I'm concerned. But you cannot carry a grudge. You cannot lose sight of to err is forgiven, to err is human, to forgive is divine. Because you are literally a spark of God. And the God force does not have room in its consciousness for cruelty, which is what grudges are. They're cruel. They're cruel to you carrying the grudge, and they're cruel to the person who's receiving the negative energy. I wrote some things down here that the Buddha was famous for saying. And remember, his name was not Buddha, it was Siddhartha. He was a prince in a kingdom that his father was king of. He was married, they had a child. And he wanted to know what went on outside the palace walls. So he bribed one of the servants to take him outside at night when everybody was asleep. And he didn't realize that his father and everybody around who was older were wearing makeup. He just thought everybody looked the same until he saw people who were older. And he said to his servant, why does that person look like that? He said, well, he's aged, he's gotten older. Everybody gets older, everybody gets older. And then he saw some people who were very sick. And he said, what's that? And the servant said, he's sick. Well, what's sick? Sick is when something isn't working, or maybe you've been hurt, or you were born with a problem. People are sick and they're born with problems, or they get problems. And then he came across some people who had died. So the lesson is everybody gets older, everybody gets sick, everybody dies. That set him on his journey. He said goodbye to his wife, you have a child. Some say he did, some say he didn't leave a note, but he told the servant, and he told his father, don't harm this servant. I instructed him to take me on this journey. Now I have another journey. I have to find out about life. And one of the things he said was to understand everything is to forgive everything. Think about that. You cannot open up your mind and your heart to new information if you haven't forgiven. Because your mind and your body are so full with garbage that there's no room for the information because you're preoccupied. I gotta fix this, I gotta do that, I gotta tell him this, and I gotta tell him, I gotta. Where does that get you? Instead of, look, that's a different kind of tree. Look what that person's doing. I wonder what that's called. It's called baking. Baking, what do you put to baking? He was so sheltered that he had to find out. And of course, he was born with the karma of becoming enlightened, of becoming a being that learns about human nature and how to uncover the debris, the leaves that are hiding the truth and life. And how do we know that what the Buddha has said is accurate, more so than, say, Jesus or Yeshua or Muhammad? Because he came from a royal family, his father sent out this troop of people to follow him around to make sure he was not harmed. And he sent out some of the intellectuals to follow him and find out these great secrets that he's been looking for. So a lot of what he said was recorded. That's why he can be so accurately quoted today, because they wrote these things down whether they understood them or not. The Dalai Lama said, happiness can never be found in the outer world until we find peace within ourselves. Again, to err is human, forgive is divine, don't hang on to anger, don't hang on to grudges. And this one is one of my favorites. I never gained anything from Supreme Enlightenment. And that's why it's called Supreme Enlightenment. I don't know the environment that he said that in. But what he's saying is, he really did go to all these gurus and these special people and studied with them, and he never learned anything. They were all saying the same thing, and they didn't really have the secret to the universe. But his secret to the universe was meditation and understanding that it takes time and practice. The old joke, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. How do you get a good meditation? You practice, practice, practice. Or sometimes on the first or the third or the 10th or the 20th time you meditate, you will have a wonderful experience. You'll be so excited. You'll think, maybe I am special. Wow, maybe the universe has something great for me. I can't wait till I meditate tonight. And then nothing. You get nothing. Not for days, not for weeks, maybe not even for years. But the universe is testing you. Your guardian angel knows when you're meditating. The God force knows when you're meditating. How come? Because every time you meditate, you call in higher light, higher thought, higher existence. And it's like watching a distant star. It gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And you get brighter and brighter and brighter. So the universe can't help but notice that it's getting brighter in this teeny weeny little corner. It's getting happier in this teeny weeny little corner. Every kind thing you do creates a little burst of light, like a little firefly. You notice, yeah, too many people think, I have to have a bigger lawn. You don't need a bigger lawn. You need more trees. You need more bushes. You need more flowers. You need more flowers and things that bees and butterflies and hummingbirds and other birds can pollinate and cross-pollinate. And think about it. You're thinking, well, no, I thought just hummingbirds pollinate. No, because birds that hop in amongst the flowers and the bushes have the pollen brushed on their feathers, and then they go to another plant and they go to another flower. And so they're spreading the pollen around. It's not just hummingbirds. And there are also birds that thrive in the leaves that are in a pile or that are in an area that you let grow wild in your backyard. I get birds and blooms and birds and blooms extra. I cannot tell you which of the 70 billion exaggerations, 70 billion birds, ground nesting birds there are. And there are also ground nesting birds at the beach. And Carolina, I think it's North Carolina, has a program, as well as Maryland. Most of the states that are on the East Coast have this program because they're marsh birds. And marsh are the sea oats and the different, whether it's saltwater marsh or freshwater marsh, could be cattails that are growing, and their nests are built amongst that area. But now with the rising tides, because of global warming and global climate change, they're getting washed away. And these are birds that are tuned into the cycle of the new moon and the full moon. By the way, today, the 14th is this 14th or the 13th? 14th, right, is the new moon, is the full moon. What a wonderful day to start your meditation. But these birds have a very short gestation time. And so usually by the time they lay the egg and before the full moon hits with the tides rising higher, the little birds are born and hopping along somewhere else. That's not happening anymore because the waters are coming in and washing away. So what they're doing is building up the marshes, building up the cattail area, building up and then trying to move the nesting areas back further. It's okay for this year. They'll try it again next year, but eventually it's not going to happen anymore. And we'll lose millions upon millions of birds. And you think, who needs more birds? We need birds. Everything that God has put on this planet is supposed to be here for a reason. I still don't understand tarantulas and poisonous spiders and poisonous snakes and alligators, crocodiles, and Komodo dragons, and what is that thing they have out in the Mojave Desert?
Scorpions.
What?
Scorpions.
Oh, scorpions. Yeah, I don't get those either. But no, that lizard, it's the one lizard in the United States that is poisonous. It'll come to me after the show, of
You
course.
said Komodo dragon already.
No, Komodo dragon is in Indonesia. This is in Arizona, which can sometimes seem like Indonesia. But I don't understand that concept. I don't understand a lot of things. I have many conversations with God. And before you say, oh, you can't say that to God. The God force, whether it's a mist or a light or an expanding energy, expanding, moving back and forth, flowing, ever present, everything, like a fog and a mist and sunshine when it's a sunny day, inside everything. It created the thought patterns of everything. How can that force field that you want to call God, the light, the energy, how can that not know what you're thinking? So God and I have many conversations. I have not been happy with either some of the slight answers or some of the answers that I've partly gotten, and then being ignored is the worst. Because if you give me a little bit of a hint, I can pretty well go from there. So the God force thinks, you don't need to know that, Linda, or it's not important. Move along to something else that is important. One of my biggest questions is, why did you create humans? Nobody's been able to tell me. But most of the world religions, and I don't mean Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, because they were created in an area of the world that trades women, still today sells women as wives or slaves and or prostitutes and whatever you want to do with them, and give me the money. This is happening all over the Middle East. It's happening in parts of South America. It's happening in Indonesia. Women are considered not important. Really? That's fine. We'll reincarnate as men. There won't be any women, and that means there won't be any of you. Because humans are not like lizards or like certain fish that if they need a female, they'll make a female. Or if they need a male, they'll convert, they'll transform into a male and then fertilize the female's eggs. You need us, guys. But it's also why the laws are so screwed up, because men are terrified of women in power. I don't know if you're watching First Ladies on Showtime. It is excellent. It's a segment, 3 different segments shown throughout the hour. Brilliantly done, brilliantly edited. It's Eleanor Roosevelt, Michelle Obama, and Betty Ford. The Betty Ford, who started the Ford Foundation, Betty Ford Foundation, and her alcoholism and pill abuse given to her by God knows how many different doctors. And the doctors at the time said, because Betty Ford asked, is alcohol playing any kind of a role in me taking any of these pills? And the doctor's answers were, no, they work on different parts of the brain. Well, the answer is yes. We all know that today. It makes perfect sense. But she did remarkable things. She talked about her mastectomy, having breast cancer. Women flocked to get mastectomies and found how many cancers. She talked about her alcoholism and pill addiction. People flocked to doctors and asked for help. They didn't know much about her at that time, but she helped and raised money and created the foundation for the Betty Ford Center, and is considered one of the leading rehab facilities in the world. Others have copied and gotten their instruction there and gotten their internship there, and she did wonderful things. Think of the millions of people she has helped. And the breast mammographies that they have today are far superior to what they had then. They can find things that a regular mammography would not have found for 5 years. So please, I don't care if you're 25. If you're 25, you get a baseline. You should always get a baseline so that it can be compared as the years go on. And they can say, wait a minute, this wasn't here when she was 25. We have to go look at this. This wasn't there. And your breasts change if you breastfeed your children. So you need a mammography after you're doing your after you finish breastfeeding. So please go once a year, once every 18 months. Our dear friend Karen's life was saved. I don't want to take credit for it, but I will, because I threatened to drive down to Sarasota and drag her by her hair. There were several places I was going to bring her up to the breast center in Clearwater, but it turns out they had one in Sarasota. So she went, and they went running out in the parking lot after her. Dragged her back, redid it, then did an ultrasound, and said, we would not have found this for 5 years. They went in, they knew there was a point that was that was cancerous, and I had a question about another one. And that was just beginning. Her life was saved. She has a happy, healthy life. She goes every 6 months for her checkup, and she's been doing great. That can be your story. By the way, men, if there's breast cancer anywhere, or if you have Jewish blood, you can be carrying BRCA1 or BRCA2. Get your mammography. Men are now in the waiting room. The last time I went for mine, there were 2 men sitting out there with the rest of the women. And they were not at all apologetic. They were happy to be there. And I was happy to see them there. And I caught both their eyes and I went just like this. Thumbs up. Was so happy to see them, because you could be carrying the genetics as well. And if you're carrying the genetics, I would consider telling you not to have children, because you'll pass it along. And not every child of a woman with BRCA1 and BRCA2 carries it, so that's okay if you've been tested, genetically tested. You talk to your doctor about it, they'll tell you where to go for the testing, and perhaps they do it right there at the hospital. So that also gets things off your mind, because perhaps your mother had breast cancer and you're terrified and you're mad and you're carrying a grudge because you could be having the same genetics that she has that caused the breast cancer to develop. Most of the time, not every single time, but most of the time. Get your mammography and get checked up. And it's not your mother's fault that she's carrying this genetic. It's been around a long time. They didn't know about genetics. So don't carry that as a grudge. To forgive is divine. Who are you going to forgive? Where did it come from? Why does she have it? Well, it was passed along by her mother. No one ever wins. And what is a bigger, much bigger side effect? What is that expression? All that evil needs to exist is for good people to do nothing. And that could mean you know about it and you say, it's none of my business. You know about it and say, I can't do anything about it. You know about it and you don't report it. Like with battered children. I was battered. My neighbors knew it. I think I've told you one time, my mother was running around closing the windows. And I said, what are you closing the windows for? She said, I don't want the neighbors to hear me when I'm beating your brains in. I said, why not? They already know. Are they paying the mortgage? Are they putting food on the table for me? Because my mother didn't cook and she didn't buy food. A lot of times I had bread and butter for dinner. I said, are they coming over here to take care of me? Are they supporting me? Are they looking to give you counseling? Are they putting clothes on my back? Well, then screw them. I don't care what they hear. Just batter away. They're going to anyway. Well, she stopped dead. She couldn't believe I was that aware of the universe. I was a teenager. I don't remember the exact age. And then she took the stick and she whacked it over my back. And then I pushed her away. And I said, I'm tired of this. And years later, after not speaking to her for years, I called on Mother's Day and said, I want to forgive you for all the abuse. And I purposely set Mother's Day, and I had to do it before 11 o'clock in the morning because she'd be drunk by 12 and 1. So it killed me to do it, but I knew I had to get it started. And what better day than Mother's Day? That took a lot of guts. I'm proud of that. That's a good girl for that. So evil thrives on unhappiness, confusion, anger, meanness, grudges, any kind of discord. And what happens with grudges? You create more anger. And when you're angry and you're overwhelmed with it and you displaced it and that's not doing the job, you make little mistakes, whether they're observational mistakes, whether they're behavior mistakes, whatever mistakes they are. And then those mistakes begin to spread to other people. And that's the discord around you. You're creating misery. And if you drink, knock it off. The booze companies will survive. And if they don't, which is my prayer, all the winemakers, all the beer makers, all the cuteness and all the cleverness of being, a little individual, their exclusive brewery, it's booze. Play off. Nobody was born with a selection of booze coming out of the uterus as well. And please, I gotta tell you, I'm really tired of being told that addiction is a disease. It was called a disease back in the 70s, the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, so that the insurance would cover it. Because it's expensive to get cleaned up. Even when the Rolling Stones went to Switzerland back in the 70s, I think it was, and they were all put in a coma and they had transfusions. Their whole blood was transfused out of their bodies. I don't remember how many cycles they had, because don't forget, the drugs are not just in your blood, but they're in your nerves, they're in your muscles, they're in your organs. So to just clean out the blood once, not really enough. And I don't remember how long they were there. I don't think Mick Jagger is sitting watching this show, but if he is, it would be great if he contacted me and told me how many cleansings you had. And I think they had to go back a couple of years later. And they've been sober for years. And they've had other activities outside of rock and roll. You may not know that Mick Jagger is an expert in antiques. You think, Mick Jagger, I can't get enough satisfaction. Antiques Roadshow. Well, people have different realities, different concepts, different things that they perhaps would have participated in if they didn't become rock and roll, or if they didn't become doctors, or if they didn't become veterinarians. They have other interests. So that can be a whole new life for you. If you get your head out of the fog. And you have to forgive yourself. Yes, you caused a nightmare in the family. You ran up the family budget and almost bankrupted everybody. Forgive and begin to pay back $10 a day, $10 a week, if that's what you have to do. Because it's expensive. Your family probably took money from their food budget, took money from their movie budget, so that they can contribute to you getting better. Evil exists on anything that is askew and emphasizes it and pushes it towards you even more, so that you're more filled with anger and confusion. Evil wants to destroy you. Why? If you're logical, if you're a normal person, that's a question you'll be asking. Why? Because evil is a separate existence unto itself, not created by God. We can talk about that at another show, because it's a complex situation, although it's simple. And you find that the more complex things are, when you break them down, they're simple. Just like forgive people and let it go. don't forgive them and keep hashing it over. That doesn't mean that you don't forget. You can remember it so that it doesn't happen again. Or if it starts to happen again, you say, wait a minute, that happened in 1922. That happened in 2015. Oh, I remember. Okay. It's not going to happen again. And you could stop it in its tracks, or stop yourself in the tracks and remove yourself from the situation. And don't let it reoccur.
5 minutes.
So therefore, it's up to you to decide, are you going to be a bully? If you are you going to let the person forgive you? Are you going to accept their forgiveness? Or do you think you're so awful? Or do you think maybe the person isn't sincere? Shut up and don't worry about it. Take the forgiveness. And if you're the one that's been injured, forgive the person. And the more you forgive them, you can say the words, maybe you're not quite feeling it, but say the words anyway. And as time goes on, you really forgive it and you really begin to forget it, so that it's something that's so far in your past that you'd have to be reminded of it. I promise you, your life will be easier. Your life will be happier. Your life will be lighter. You feel light, like when you become a vegetarian. After about a week, it's hard to describe, but it's like you've lost 50 pounds. You feel lighter. And how can I feel lighter? I'm the same way. Because your soul is not taking in the energy of all the other souls of the animals you've eaten. Most souls have memory. Every massage therapist, every acupuncturist, every oriental doctor, every good neurologist will tell you that. If you get hit in a certain area on your body or you're in a car accident, you may remember something when you fell off a bicycle when you were 3. So you're not taking in the souls of the animals you've been eating.
3 minutes.
You're not taking any new, and you feel new and lighter. You will feel that new, lighter feeling when you forgive. My suggestion, make a list of all the things and the people who harmed you. And right at the top, people who've harmed me, and I forgive them. And if you can't bear to call them up on the phone and say, I forgive you, send them a note. Say, I forgive you for knocking me off my bicycle. I forgive you for telling the lie in school and I got punished. I forgive you for cheating on me. I'm not going back to you, but I forgive you. And you will feel like a new person. And one of the things that can help you is meditation. It doesn't conflict with any of your religions. Eventually, you'll let go of those religions because you'll realize that God is not in those religions. Your soul is a part of the God force. You don't need anything in between you and God. There was a famous woman in India who didn't wear clothes because she said, I don't want anything between me and God. And if you just open up your hearts and minds, you are going to know that God and the angels are always with you. Namaste. I'm Linda Bennett. Join us again.